you tell me your name and where you're from?
My name is Taylor, and I grew up in Minneapolis, and I'm generally from that area.
Can you tell me about what family means to you?
To me, family, I honestly feel like family, I don't know how I would say it more of like, I think family is made. I don't think that, I don't personally believe in like family being everyone that you're blood related to. I'm a pretty big believer on like holding people accountable for the way that they show up, and so family to me is people that love you unconditionally and consistently, and you're able to hold accountable, I guess. So for me, I have my main family for me is my aunt, for example, so I'm not close to my parents, and so to me that's somebody who has been consistent, who has showed unconditional love for me, and I would just say like friends, having, when I think of family, I think of like the close people in my life.
Yeah. What is your first memory of a tradition with your aunt?
The first thing that comes to mind is Christmas Eve is something I've always spent with my aunt. We've always been at her house, regardless of where she's lived. She actually decided to stay in Minnesota so she can be closer to me and my sister growing up. Because she, used to be pretty successful. She had a lot of opportunities to leave the state, and I'm really thankful that she stayed and has been a part of our life, or at least my life, my whole life. And Christmas Eve specifically was, no matter what was going on with my family, or even currently now, we spend it together, which is really special. So that really just entails going over to her house. We get to open all the presents from her. And then usually what I did growing up with my family is we got to open one of our presents other than the ones from my aunt. And she would bake a bunch of, she would cook a bunch of Italian food and make a bunch of desserts or buy desserts. And it was just it was always my favorite thing. Also just my favorite food. So I was always like super excited for Christmas Eve specifically, even when I was still close with my parents, because it was just my favorite food, one of my favorite people, and just an awesome time.
What was your favorite dish that she used to make?
Something that, in speaking of tradition, something I think about a lot is fried cauliflower, because that was something that they involved me in at a really young age, which is really weird to me because it's like literally like they had me frying things at a young age, and honestly I was terrified of it, but I was like, I'm peer pressured and like this is my job and role. So I would help them with that, and that's something I think about when I think about major holidays. I think about making that, and it also like links back to my grandma, because that's something my grandma would do with all of us. Something else that I can think of too is we have a birthday cake in my family that is like kind of like an all celebration cake, mainly a birthday cake, and it's something that just reminds me of like family and connection. It's something that I've had for every birthday growing up. It's something that my grandma would make for us, my aunt, my parents, and it was something that no matter who you were, this was kind of our way of showing love, which I thought was really cool. And so I think about that too, because that was something that showed up so much more than just Christmas. So that's something else that's super, super special to me.
How does that feel to have something that kind of connects the generations in your family?
Super special. I come from an Italian household, so we're very proud of being Italians, and I prefer my mom's side of the family anyway. I'm actually close with them specifically, so that's just full of a bunch of Italians and like a really close knit group of people. So being able to share traditions and pass things down is huge for everyone involved. It always made me feel really close to my grandma, even though she lived pretty far away. She lived like 3 or 4 hours away my whole life growing up. And I even had a grandma who was closer, and I still felt closer to this grandma just because of, I think, the way that side of the family loves and like shares things with people. Like for instance, my grandmother, or my aunt growing up with my grandmother, they had like a revolving household where everybody in the town would come and spend time together. They would just come and sit down and share stories, share recipes. So a lot of the recipes I grew up with aren't even just Italian. They're stuff that the community shared. They're things that their close friends shared. One of a really close family friend who we refer to their whole family as like aunts and uncles and grandmothers. They shared a lot of their traditions with us, and like I think it's always been cool seeing my grandmother and now my aunt like sharing traditions of like family and friends. And I think it also motivated me when I need to step away from my parents to be like, I can create a family, I can have friends and people and a community that can be a shared thing. So I think it's super special, and I think it made me feel really connected to everybody. And also connected to people I'd never met, because it's like some of these recipes are like random neighbors that are now, who even knows where they are, but like now I have the recipes. So it's cool to see like the impact people left on like my grandmother and my aunt's lives, and then they could share it with me. And I think it's cool to share it with people I love too.
Do you share the birthday cake? What is it? The Serrano birthday cake?
Swanson birthday, yeah. Yes. To me, when I think about giving that cake, I think about like giving, it's like an act of love, of like, you're really important to me, you're really close to me, I'm making this for you, because that was what it was, because it was always like family. That was like a very close family tradition, and so for me, being able to do that for people I love feels like it's kind of like an act of love, and I think it's super cool. I've made it for a couple of friends. I've helped make it for other family members. I want to take on making it more, because it's not like the most specific, like extraordinary cake in the world. But it is one of, like, to me, the cake is just really yummy and like back to basics, which is super Italian, using minimal ingredients. It's literally just chocolate cake and homemade whipped frosting and whipped cream. And that's it. It's literally just layered cake. It's not like fancy. And in fact, my grandmother, who originated the recipe, she didn't really originate it. She took it from a friend. And that friend had written down like box cake as just a part of the recipe. And so my grandma refused to make homemade cake because that was the recipe and you have to buy a box cake, which also makes it easier for me because I'm not about to go make a homemade cake because baking is not one of my strengths, but like I can manage this cake. So it's cool to have something like that to me has always meant a labor of love that I can give to other people, and also not really complicated. Thank God.
So I know you said it's really easy, but can you tell me the process of making it? Yeah,
so you'll take, typically what I do is I do 2 different box cakes. I will usually use like a circle pan because it's, I don't know, I've actually never seen it made. It could theoretically be made in many ways, but I make it in like a circle pan. And once you make the cake, you want to cut it in half and cool it, because you're going to essentially have 3 layers in the cake. And so you'll take, you'll make homemade whipping cream, which is just heavy whipping cream and a lot of sugar, and you can hand whisk it, which I've done. That was another task they would give me as a child, which is just, it really irritated me, but now I love it and I know how to do it, and it's a useful skill. It's cool that we made homemade whipping cream instead of like just going out and buying it, but also it takes a lot. It takes a lot out of you. So you make homemade whipping cream, and then you actually will create the layers of the cake with cake and then whipping cream, like a lot. Like you would pack it on heavy, and then you would finish the cake off with chocolate icing. If you ask me, the way I prefer to eat the cake is once I get my like slice of cake, I just mix it all together. It's just so good to me. I care about the whipped cream the most in this cake, but it's super simple. But it's like, I think the reason it holds so much impact for people, both like in our family and like when we're able to give it to others, is because it has so much love and emotion. Like when we're giving the cake to somebody, we're like, okay, this is the Swanson birthday cake, this is the story of the cake, this is why the cake means so much. And I think people really feel the love when they get the cake. But
do you have any other like family recipes that hold that same history from your family's hometown?
Something that I think about a lot for me is, and I have not made this on my own ever. I would like to in the future, because it's something that like makes me think a lot about my grandmother. But she actually used to make homemade meatballs and homemade sauce. And it used to be like a staple dish. Like when we get to go visit her, she's gonna make this for us, and it's something that we would all make. So that's something that I've always wanted to recreate. I'm kind of weird about meat. I'm not a vegetarian, but I'm always like teetering on the edge of that. So I'm like, I kind of want to make this, but also like working with meat is like kind of like culinarily like a little bit of a lot for me. So it's definitely a goal at some point in the future to maybe sit with my aunt and kind of go through that process, because my grandma passed away, and try that out. Something I know that I've for sure made and been a part of the process with is making sarmas, which is not from my grandmother originally. It's actually from that other family that they grew up with that's like their best friends. So they were like my aunt and grandmother. It's actually Slavic. It's called sarmas. Actually, I don't know if that's the official name of it, but it's essentially pickled cabbage roll stuffed with meat, and it's something that the entire town they came from makes. It's like a staple of that area. It's a staple of these families, and it's something that reminds me of my grandmother and that community. Super, super tight-knit community. It was cool growing up learning about how loving and connected they all were, especially like growing up in Minneapolis. I saw that in its own way. Then, moving over to a suburb, not as much. There's less community, and so it was interesting to grow up with this idea of what a great community could look like, and then kind of experience it, and then kind of have that ripped away, because it is pretty distant in the suburbs. You're not really always friends with your neighbors. Like, for instance, like growing up in Minneapolis, we would have block parties all the time. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody was out and about with everyone else. And in the suburbs, you're staying in your own house. You're not really mingling. Like, you can, and people do, but it's sort of like a culture shift. And I remember thinking of that, growing up, being like, knowing about the different ways that communities can come together. So I think it's cool being able to create your own community where you are, because sometimes you don't just get to be a part of one. Sometimes you live in a place where no one wants to be in a community with you, which is okay. And so it's cool that they got that, and that they got to share so much as a community. Because specifically they grew up in like up by the Iron Range, which is kind of like a melting pot just because of the iron mines. So there were so many different cultures that were just around in that town. And I think it's cool because usually when you think of small towns, you think of like not as much culture, a lot of like narrow-mindedness, and that is not what they experienced. I think that's super cool. And it felt like they were like a little experiment. Like I still have not heard of this happening anywhere else. And I think it's really cool that they got to all come together.
Do you feel like you found community in continuing these traditions with your chosen family?
I do. To me, what I hope to emulate with sharing these things with people I love is the feeling I got when they were shared with me. Just of like, you are loved, you are special, you're in this with us. And when I'm able to share these things, it feels like I'm able to give it feels like a family tradition that I feel proud of. Like, I am not always proud of specifically my parents, but like having like these traditions of people in my family that have always been consistent and unconditional and important parts of my life, being able to be like, this is their love, this is their culture, this is their history, and I want to share that. I think most people really want to have that, and I feel really lucky that I get to like share that, and I hope that people can adapt that too, because I've taken things from other people that weren't my family's, and been able to incorporate that into, I don't know, who I am with people I love, and the community that I have.
I know that you just got back from Italy. Do you feel like that helped connect you to your heritage a lot?
I think so. It was a really cool experience. I think being able to experience the food was really important for me, just to be able to try like this tastes like my grandmother, or this tastes like something I grew up with. But also being able to do that with my aunt specifically, I think is what made me feel really connected, just because she is like my main like support system. And being able to go on that trip with her was so special. It felt, when I would think about going to Italy, because it was my bucket list, like this is where I have to go, I was like, I would love to do that, and I would feel most comfortable doing that with my aunt, and like with somebody who knows so much about that side of our family, knows so much about the history who was old enough to know my great-grandfather and her great-grandfather, the people who immigrated here from there. And so her being able to see people who look like her family members and her being able to see that and like, she's been there before, but on business, very like limited time. So her being able to enjoy that and relax into that was a really cool experience. And yeah, I think the culture was cool. It made me feel closer to my culture and closer to what I would hear about growing up. Because you would hear stories, you'd hear traditions, and then being able to go there and like see them and hear them was really cool to ground me in. Yep, this is what that is. Like this is a thing, and it's something that I can share with people too.
Do you know any Italian?
I know very basic Italian. I know grazie, thank you. I know arrivederci, goodbye, ciao, salve, buongiorno. I know very limited. I know quanto questo, how much is this? I knew what I needed to know. I am intending on learning more Italian, mainly because I do want to get dual citizenship. And part of the requirements is specifically like having a certain level of Italian. And I actually was trying to learn Italian before I went, and then I gave up. So maybe I'll get back to it. It's a long-term goal. Like I'm hoping to eventually get dual citizenship. It's not like a immediate thing, but it was cool hearing everyone speak Italian. I think that also helps me feel closer to my culture, is learning more about Italian. But
what was your favorite thing you did on your trip?
We actually went to a cooking class, and this actually is what when you were asking me about feeling connected to your culture and like feeling connected to your family. Actually, what I think about is the cooking class, because we actually got to go into a home of a family. And we got to sit with them, we got to laugh with them, we got to drink with them, we got to cook with them, and then like have a full meal and dinner with them. And it was really cool to just see their culture, hear about how they learned their recipes. So the family that we took the cooking class from, they had like generational recipes that they were making for us. And also just like their banter and their like personalities together reminded me of my family, and it was just really, really special to experience that with them and then with my aunt. And I thought it was really cool that I got to learn how to make a lot of things, and also just like they helped us feel really connected to Italy. Like we were interacting with a lot of people who were there for tourists, like hotel, like people that are like, yes, they were being paid, but they made it feel more of like, let me tell you about where you are in a way that we probably wouldn't have gotten in any other circumstance. I wasn't able to see my cousin, which sucks. So she's actually planning on coming to America next year, so I'll actually get to meet her, which is really exciting. But throughout the whole trip, she was messaging me, being like, do you need anything? Is everything good? I think that was really cool. I wish she would have been there with us to be a part of that. But I do plan to go back to Italy, so then maybe we could try that again. But yeah, definitely the cooking class, and just having dinner with these people and hearing everything they've experienced, everything they know. It was really cool.
Yeah. What part of Italy do your cousins and family live in?
So my entire, well, no, that's not true. I'll say my entire family's from this area, but we have family in Rome too. But most of my family from Italy is from Reggio Calabria, which is the tip of the boot. It's right next to Sicily. And it's actually like a poorer region, which I didn't realize, and like there's not a lot of resources, so it would have been hard for us to like go down there and meet them there. That is a goal I have though, and I've been thinking about how to make that work, because I think it would be cool to see like where my family's from. Yeah, so they're from super, super southern Italy, and then some of them are from Rome, but the ones that we're connected with and we know are from Reggio.
And they still live there from when your grandparents immigrated.
Yes, yeah. And my cousin that I'm in contact with, she speaks English. Her parents don't, but they have like photographs, and they have like memories of hearing about the cousins who are my grandparents. They don't have too many memories with them, just generationally where they were at when they ended up leaving. But I think it was cool because they were so excited to learn that they have family other places and like be able to connect with us. So for the holidays, we all Zoom each other. For most major holidays, we talk, and I also just message my cousin, which is really cool.
Do you think that they would make the Swanson birthday cake?
No. I actually don't know. I wonder what, like for them, what desserts they have. I can't remember off the top of my head. I wish I could. There's a traditional Italian, like, dry cookie or cake, and I cannot remember because I had never heard of it, and my aunt had known about it. It was just not like a desirable thing anyone wanted to share or have anyone make. But it's some traditional thing from that area, and my cousin's like, "Oh, we'll send you that. We'll send that over to you." And she's like, "Okay," because it's not good at all. And I wish I could remember the name of it, but it was like, and from her perspective, such a sweet offering, and then from us, my mom was like, "I'm happy that didn't show up, low-key. It's gross. I don't know what it is." But anyway.
Yeah, I do think it's funny that your family is like connoisseurs of food now, but we're gonna get a dry cookie.
I know, and I also think it's cool because it shows the community impact that they had on each other, because a lot of my grandma's recipes weren't just Italian, and I think to me, it's hard for me to be like, this is Italian, this isn't Italian. So like, it wasn't quite all encompassing of them, but it did show me a lot of my family, which was cool.
Is there anything else you want to tell me?
I think that tradition is something that shows love. That's how I see tradition. That's why I love these specific traditions. I think traditions can be not a good thing at times, and I think that in order for them to have value is to have that love behind it. And I think that it shows this like connectiveness of not only am I making this for you, but this was made for me when I was a kid. This was made from this family member that you know. And I think it's cool that it connects generations and also connects chosen family. Because sometimes, most of the time what you have when you connect each other is memories, and it is tradition.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
No, that was recording. My eyes are
I know. Hello.
Tell them to take off their mascara. Also, they totally knocked stuff down on there. I wanted to have you